People who had considered themselves incels but have since had sex. How do you feel looking back at your previous self? I am so glad I had my teenage years in the late 80s early 90s before the internet, let alone social media. Back then I couldn't get a date, let alone a girlfriend. I was, to be fair, hardly a catch, suffering from persistent depressive disorder, form unorderly Q ladies, and just generally having problems adapting. I was acknowledged to be a bit weird. I kind of accepted that it was my fault, which was bad for me short term but probably good in the long term for everyone concerned. Ultimately I had to sort myself out, but if I had had access to the sort of incel she online around today, I fear I would have lapped it up with a spoon. A very large group of like-minded people telling me it isn't my fault, I can stop moping and start hating. Fantastic. I would have been able to celebrate my status instead of reflecting on it and changing it. I'm sure I'd have been more than tempted. Social media has eroded, even destroyed, the concepts of privacy Gen X and before took for granted. For us to be an outsider, to be weird, was something you could do alone and grow out of if you wanted to, of course. For the later millennials and beyond, even in quarantine, there is no alone. No solitude to reflect. Everything seems to be out there looking for likes and other forms of validation my adult mid-40s brain can't comprehend. Incels are a form of social validation that could not really have existed before social media. To get a network like that going would have been logistically and technically impossible on a scale beyond small outsider cliques in secondary schools. Now they are a movement. I somewhat pity incels because, but for 20 or so years, I could have been one of them. I honestly think social media is allowing the development of a whole Pandora's box of mental illnesses. Some are derivations of previously understood mental illnesses, while other are just being recognized, like gaming addiction. The lack of privacy is something that bothers me too. Like, I'm 31. I grew up in the 90s and early zeros. In those days on the internet, the rule was you didn't share intimate details about your life or even your name, etc. unless you trust them after a long period of time. And even then it was a gray area. Now, people post every innate detail about their lives and careers online, not just for family and friends, but complete strangers to approve of. I never really considered myself an incel at the time, mostly because I'd never heard the phrase, but I was very incel-y in high school. I was the type of person who would hold a door open and then wonder why girls weren't falling into my lap. Turns out high school me wasn't that attractive and nice isn't a personality. I fell very much into the Chads and Stacy's frame of mind for a while. A lot of things changed really, but mostly I just grew up. It's a super childish view of things and just doesn't take into account that the people around you are well people. If someone held a door open for you, you wouldn't throw yourself at them. It's about the maturity in relationships. But seriously, F high school me. We were all idiots in high school. Thank you for being one person who admits it. I was a being of pure hatred. I always thought it was someone else's fault, even though I have had sex since that time. I think it's important to know that having sex isn't what vindicates you. Inceldom is a state of mind which requires strength and sometimes outside guidance to overcome. One of my friends essentially gave me a proverbial slap to the face on the subject and told me exactly what to do and how to become a more better person. In conclusion, I look back with regret and sorrow for all the people I hurt and made uncomfortable, because I know there are many. You know, I don't know if this'll be buried, but I can actually share something valuable here. TLDR, it comes down to lack of respect and ignorance to self-awareness. I did consider myself mostly an incel, maybe more of a nice guy, but to my core I believed that girls were only after the chads and oucher bags. It was from the ages of 12-18. So a lot through my formative years. Here's the mindset. You've never had any awareness of the fact that girls don't indeed chase oucher bags, because that's all you've ever looked for. Whenever you see a pretty girl who says she is in a relationship, you immediately assume that her boyfriend is a terrible person. Though, not because he is, but because you yourself assume that you would just be so much better off with her than any other person. You won't see your own flaws, so you'll assume the worst of the guy. The truth is, it comes down to major insecurity issues and a lack of any male relationships. If you don't have many different male friends, you're going to assume that only the cocky guys get the girls. In reality, they are displaying charisma and confidence, something that is very attractive. Everyone knows this. It's a lack of awareness. It's easier to say that you yourself are too short, too ugly, too untalented, etc., than to admit that you have a crappy personality with little to no charisma. You won't find a happy, charming incel. If I could have gone back to myself and say, here's the deal. Girls don't look for one particular thing in a dude. They don't just want a tall dude, or a wide-jawed dude. They want someone to be comfortable around. They don't want you to praise them as some higher being. They want to be treated with respect. But most importantly, they don't exist to have sex with you. They don't even exist to be your friend. They don't owe you anything, no one does. Just because you like them, doesn't mean they have to like you. Don't try to sleep with girls by being their friend. Be grateful that someone sees any quality in your person for them to want to be around you at all. Be grateful that someone wants to be your friend. You are shallow and you only care about looks. You saying it's about personality is all bullsh. That's it. I was a young, angry kid. I'm glad I'm the man I am today. I've had a lot of confidence issues which went away as I grew older. I went through many edgy phases, and it took all of these mistakes to learn them. So I feel empathy for incels because they don't know any better. They don't know just how wrong they are. Because admitting fault and self-improvement takes time and effort. Blaming and hating girls does not. Instead of hating girls, I only wish is that I started on self-improvement sooner. I also think a lot of guys hear self-improvement advice and think it means improving themselves to be more appealing to women. But that really misses the point. The goal is to be someone you're happy with, proud of, comfortable with, and confident in. I'm good friends with a guy who used to be a part of a popular incel website, and he used to post on Reddit. That's actually how we met. He is still growing a lot as a person. He was incredibly angry. He blamed being ugly for his failure with women, and nothing anyone said could convince him that it wasn't that. It was that he thought that he would only be happy with a really hot girl. We hung out once and were talking about how he wanted to approach women out with us. We were at a very nice place and the neighborhood had plenty of high maintenance women. You know, the kind wearing expensive athleisure and who spent their entire lives dieting and doing spinning classes, expensive hair and nails, all that. Women who were really dedicated to looking good. There were also the girls that worked there, and a few other customers about our age. He literally only saw the hot ladies. He was upset they'd never date anyone like him, someone who has pretty much no career ambition, doesn't want to conform by dressing or eating like they do, etc. And the average women in there just weren't women to him. It was really dehumanizing, because I saw him as an equal, and although he was sort of my friend, he didn't see me as human as he saw the hot ladies in Lululemon. He eventually saw a therapist. Actually, a few therapists. It was mostly to tell people he'd done it, but he stuck with it. Saw a few until one worked, and he started working on himself. We texted, emailed, etc. Hung out a few times, but honestly he wasn't working too hard on making friends, because he'd constantly say stuff that was belittling or mean just to hurt me or women in general, because he could. He also had spent too much time in black pill subreddits, because he brought it up on the one time I invited him out with my trivia team. A few months ago, before I had some major health issues and the pandemic kicked off, he got back in touch. He sent me a long email that was actually okay-ish. He had briefly dated a woman. They had slept together, and then he realized he still actually hated women and her too, because she wasn't living up to his fantasy, and that no one could. He realized he had a lot of conflicting ideas, that women shouldn't depend on men for money, but they also shouldn't be too career focused, etc. Just a lot of bad stuff all rolled up into one. He had included a bunch of stuff I absolutely hated, like the fact that he still feels that women our age are past their prime and have cellulite. I basically didn't have a ton of energy to reply other than to tell him I hoped he kept working at it and wasn't dating anyone else until he got over actively hating women. As a girl, I thought that only seeing the hot girls thing was normal for guys. I went to med school and roomed with a bunch of guys and they and their friends were exactly like this, and as one of the ugly ones it's still affecting me to this day. Is this really abnormal, or is it just something we have to accept? I'd say that the whole experience has drilled some incel-like mindsets into me, and I know it's a defense mechanism, so I never, ever let myself get that hurt again, but it's hard to get out of it. Stuff like guys only see the hot girls. I'm invisible. Guys won't ever pay attention to me until my ears are perfect. Massive round bubble and my waist is the same size as my thigh. Guys don't like breasts anymore. They've gone out of fashion and I was born way too late. Guys only like the Instagram brunette with a tan, big A and small boobs, and I was born way too late, etc. I remember when I first found the incel community, it was actually a pretty helpful place. It was more of a support group for people who were unattractive, socially awkward, there wasn't any of this nice guy, give sex bullsh. Everyone knew why they were involuntarily celibate, and just wanted to vent frustrations and get support. It was really good for my confidence. Then the toxic masculinity started to creep in and took right over. As everyone knows, I fell on the incel line of being not unattractive, but personality-wise, all I did was play video games. I didn't have anything interesting about my life, and so women just weren't interested in me, and I never put myself into situations to meet people. New job with great people. I started to do different things, played hockey for the first time at 30, joined the group for a couple of traveling tournaments where we got absolutely Vegas type blasted for weekends in different cities. Job is very much a hangout and chat type job, security, so talking with the women on the team on the regular starts removing the air of mystique I had built around them. Got my motorcycle license, and did a solo trip across the states from Canada to the Mexican border, and back that same year, started doing Tough Mudders, buying a season pass and traveling to any of the ones I could drive to. Then I got Tinder and just started going on dates, had a few good, few bad, and then met my wife. All in all, I ultimately blame a World of Warcraft addiction that held me back in my early 20s to my late 20s and just missed out on those socially formative years. I was involuntarily celibate in that I wanted to have sexual relationships, but never met anyone interested. I didn't put any effort in, so it was kinda my fault. My lifestyle just didn't lend itself to meeting people, so it was hard. When I finally did get out there and start having relationships, it was like a weight lifted off my shoulders. I realized that I had previously felt like an incomplete person because of my inability to connect with anyone, and that was holding me back from other things in life. Like I thought nothing else was worth pursuing because I hadn't properly entered adulthood yet. I kinda wish I'd just got on with it and pursued my other interests a bit more. I don't know why I had to wait. Maybe it was depression relating to me being lonely. This is a good description of me too. In high school and university, I wore very baggy clothes, had lots unkempt hair. I was smart and funny, so I had some friends, but no one particularly close because I never made any effort. Looking back, there were certainly a couple women interested in me, but I didn't know how to pursue it and was terrified at the thought of confrontation or looking stupid. So I didn't. I just expected things to evolve totally naturally, but at some point, you have to do something that maybe scares you a little or makes you feel a little uncomfortable, like discussing your feelings about a person with that person, or even just putting yourself in a position to be alone with them, even if it means you might not have anything to talk about. I would have told myself to not be afraid of what I didn't know and to make mistakes when everyone is young and awkward anyway. Like everything else, it just takes practice, and most people are as scared and bad at it as you are worried that you will be. Whether it's high school or as an adult, male or female, people want the same thing: someone to be honest, forthright, and to listen to them. I suppose I was an incel from 23-27 after leaving the military. I was depressed, underweight, socially isolated. I never got fat or super into gaming as is stereotypical. Just worked a lot, hung out with my dog, smoked way too much weed, and just sort of forgot how to interact with women, which was probably for the best. Most of my relationships prior to 23 were unhealthy at worst, meaningless at best. Ending that era of my life was a long struggle that took concerted effort towards trying to be more positive and social. One big event was buying and learning to ride a motorcycle at 27. Sort of shocked me out of my routine, opened my eyes to the fact that life was not a downhill slide from the adrenaline-filled days of 18-22, that new experiences were waiting to be had. Eventually I met a woman that I just couldn't bear to have the usual flirt until I awkwardly distanced myself experience with. I forced myself to not to my mind wander when we talked. I powered through all anxiety to call and text her daily. I even eventually would do crazy stuff like get dressed up nice and go to dinner with her, not something I could have ever seen myself doing at one point. So I'm married now, still have some issues, but very happy. So I'd say nothing to me. Just got to live through it, kid. Similar experience here. I didn't identify as an incel, but looking back I think I adopted some of those beliefs tenets. I thought women only wanted handsome men or men with charm and confidence. I liked playing EverQuest and World of Warcraft, other games, and I spent a lot of time hanging out on Portal of Evil laughing at shitty websites and shitty people. I think that made me feel better about myself and superior to others. Despite putting absolutely zero effort into exercise or improving my body, it was easier to belittle people on the internet and feel good that at least I wasn't Lord Drixington Fear. Underneath it, although I despised myself and my ineptness, that kept me single through most of my 20s. I had a girlfriend here and there but never scored, just lacking the confidence to go through with everything. The big event for me was going to university at 26-27 after years of working and travel. I made friends with a beautiful international student from Indonesia and asked her out. After requisite 2 weeks of hemming and hawing about rejection, she declined, but we remained friends, and I realized how much work she was putting into her self-fashion sense. Lots of exercise, healthy eating, and I sort of took that to heart. If she makes time for the gym, why don't I? So I started focusing on improving myself, and a year later met and began dating my wife. It was that realization that I should improve myself in the way that those I desire improve themselves that kicked me out of years of laziness and little effort into self-improvement. Finally, my time to shine. Not sure if I should be proud of that. I found my first incel forum at 13. even though it didn't have that name, but the ideologies were the same. I was miserable back then. Didn't have many friends. My grades were shit and I got bullied a lot. This made me spend most of my time inside playing video games and hating life. I hated everyone because all of my experiences with people were being bullied. I started being bullied at 4 and it didn't stop until the middle of high school. The forums were full of people thinking the same. It made me feel secure, like I was right. I didn't have to walk the hard way to improve myself. They told me I could just let go. Nobody will ever love you, so why try? You are a social reject, so why try? So I stopped showering, stopped eating, stopped caring for myself. I let myself go because these groups told me no matter how hard you try, you will fail. I became jealous of people being more popular than me. Jealous of my sister because she was so pretty and accepted herself. She had a boyfriend, but all girls hated me. At the time I didn't see that. Would I have just showered, girls wouldn't have been disgusted by me. I hated immigrants, gay people, women, handsome guys, everyone I saw as more accomplished than me. It was a hard time getting out of this mindset, but eventually I made it, turned my grades around, made some friends and went to therapy. I even have a boyfriend now. Oh, the irony. When I see incels or people like that, I just can't hate them. They are in pain and struggling and need help. Depression is one hell of a beast and some people lash out in anger. So when I look back at my old self, I really just want to give him a hug and tell him everything is going to be okay. I was a sister in a similar situation, 6 years older. So by the time my brother began to live in his video games and cave-like room, I was already in college. I remember him saying things about women not liking him, but they like the a-holes but not the nice guys like him. I did the typical sister thing and told him just to ignore girls if they like someone else and see if other girls like him. High school is tough. One of the girls he dated dumped him and burned his fedora. This was usually over phone conversations since I was moved out. He went through some really hard times, chronic genetic illness and missing school. I think that's what changed him. Now he has the most adorable sweet girlfriend and he's more humble and mature than I've ever seen him. He did date men as well, but landed on the gem of a lady he's with now. She's even really into video games with him. He went from I respect women and they still date a-holes to I respect women because they are people. I used to be the creepy weirdo who, by the time I graduated, had asked every single girl out. I literally had no idea what I was doing wrong. I was practicing all the classic southern gentleman things that I was supposed to, yet having no luck. Think M lady, but only slightly less cringy. It wasn't until I got to college and went on a period of self-discovery that I knew the error of my ways. The first, and most important, concept that I learned was that women aren't sex dispensaries that you deposit nice coins into and get puspus in return. They have to choose you. I still kept doing nice things for girls because that's the way I was raised, but I removed my expectations for getting anything in return. The second concept was making myself attractive, and it was a lot easier than I thought it would be. A nice basic buzz cut suddenly turned my oily mop of hair into a clean, presentable style, and clean shaven on facial hair too, because all I could grow was a piddly pubic hair look in a beard. Got a benzoyl peroxide solution to start working on the acne. Marching band was my form of exercise to stay fit and avoid the freshman 15. It's amazing how the problems we create for ourselves can get in our own way. I think I was maybe just a late bloomer. I had lots of female friends and was a bit geeky before it was cool. When I went to uni I realized that rejection wasn't as bad if I could laugh about it with my mates after. When I lost my V, it wasn't the big deal I thought it would be. Once that barrier was broken though, I really came into my own and never looked back. When you start coming into your own after coming in someone else, something has gone wrong. Still a virgin, but I used to call myself incel a couple years ago because I only knew it meant involuntary celibate. I didn't know any of the stuff about the black pill and the rampant misogyny. As soon as I actually discovered what it meant I stopped and felt ashamed. Also I did have a phase in high school during which I did believe some incelish stuff, but I just didn't have enough confidence to ever talk to someone I was interested in. So I never said any of the stuff out loud anywhere. I was raised by incredibly cruel people, my aunt and grandmother. They had me absolutely convinced that I was very ugly, pathetic, and just a total loser. They even hinted that I'd be better off gay, as if it's a choice, because I didn't have a shot with women. They also made me feel that as an immigrant I was considered weird and strange and women would consider me less of a catch because I was a foreigner. Since I believed all of that, I had a real resentment toward women, and like many young people I protected my pain with anger. Eventually I discovered that I was not ugly at all and in fact was considered quite attractive by many, which I never fully could wrap my head around. And guess what? Turns out women like guys with exotic accents and viewed my foreignness as interesting and even exciting. I'm just glad I realized all of that before I had become too entrenched in my anger or wasted too much time. I had a span of self-induced loathing in my early 20s that had me in the same mindset as incels, minus the whole urge to harass, but I blamed women for them not wanting to talk to me, for rejecting me. I believe someone up above talked about maturity and who they were in high school. I, too, was a D-bag. Decent looking guy bitch person. Shallow is a perfect adjective for my high school self. That whole viewpoint or self-importance carried into my early 20s and it didn't work out well. It wasn't until I was 27/28 and started getting into philosophy while getting stoned off my A because I was escaping my problems. Philosophy changed me. It made me self-reflect and force me to be honest with myself, to hold myself accountable and also to forgive myself for all the mistakes I have made and to realize I have the power to change and improve myself. That's when my incel women blaming ended. I'm glad I survived that period of my life. I think a lot of what goes on is how relationships in our society are portrayed. Speaking for myself, a guy that grew up in the 90s, it always seemed that every movie the woman was the one needing saving and the way to a woman's heart was to be a gentleman. This whimsical fairy tale taught to us at an early age sets people up for false expectations of both roles in a relationship. There really is no teaching about how hard relationships are and that no relationship should be the reason you are happy. If I was taught that growing up, maybe things would have been different for me. But that was a big personal problem for me. Trying to validate my happiness through a relationship left me wide open to get taken advantage of and pushed further into that toxic mindset. But, looking back, I'm glad I went through it. I finally found the love I've always wanted and I couldn't be happier. My relationships feel more real now and that I have a new realization and perspective on my relationships. I definitely look at women a lot differently now and have made multiple reach outs to some classmates from high school to apologize for how much of a pig I was. C is the perfect high school nickname for me. But yay, incel mentality seems to come from the self-hatred denial of one's own faults flaws. Women are not sexual objects. You don't deserve their attention. They are human beings and deserve that respect. Once those moronic incels realize they wasted the best parts of their lives blaming others for their own failures instead of making changes that will be their greatest regret in life, knowing that all along they had the power to change their situation.